All right, I'm going to continue to deviate from the agenda here. We have a number of people who have asked to address us regarding our ordinance. So I'm going to move to that ordinance, and I will ask Mr. Playfair to, it's a second reading of the ordinance. If the general manager has some comments that you'd like to offer in advance, so the process will be that we'll give the general manager an opportunity, then we'll ask Mr. Playfair to read the ordinance. We'll wait for our roll call vote on that until we've had a chance to hear from those of you that are here that would like to address us on the issue of service cuts. So if you've already submitted your form, I've got them, and if you haven't and you want to address us, please be sure in the back of the room to fill one out. We have other issues where people have asked for an opportunity to address us. We'll get to those following the ordinance on service cuts. So, General Manager?
I think would be most helpful is I'm going to ask Ken Zadarin to be able to join at the table. As you know, these have been, and as we expressed over and over again, those of us who are in the transit business, the last thing we'd like to be able to see are reductions in service, because that's the very thing that we're all about. The depth and the severity of this economic crisis nationwide, really worldwide, has made that inevitable. We have across the whole of TriMet imposed a now 9% reduction in all expenditure categories. We have done a series of other steps, from salary freezes on non-union to furloughs, other things. However, we are still faced with, obviously, most of our budget is on the actual direct service, that is operators, mechanics, those who are actually directly supervising those activities, which are the direct service. We have been able to utilize, as you heard earlier this morning, a certain small category of federal stimulus dollars to offset not that 9% on the service side, but to be able to protect that really at about 1/2 of that. That is about a 4.5% overall reduction. You're still having to wrestle with exactly how to be able to meet some of those last steps, which we will be addressing in the sign-up that controls our service in December. However, having said that, we did look very, very hard at how to be able to allocate that half level of service cuts that we found necessary to be able to balance the budget. We started off with a series of open houses at the beginning of this year that progressed to an actual proposal that went out to public hearing and ultimately to what is within the ordinance. But each step of the way, I want to be able to stress that what we heard from our riders that said, can't you find a different way, or can we in fact address this in a different fashion? And we took into account, made major modifications from both what went out to public open houses, then after public hearings, likewise made modifications. What I asked Ken Zadarin to do is to be able to walk us really through what is before you and some of the changes that were made as a result of those comments throughout this process.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. As Fred mentioned, we went through both a series of open houses and public hearings on the service reductions and made numerous modifications to that initial proposal. Many of those dealt with lines that had initially been proposed to be discontinued entirely, and we found ways to garner some cost savings in those lines while maintaining some level of service. In one of those cases, it's a pilot project to see if the ridership of the line goes up as a result of the opening of the Green Line down at Clackamas Town Center in September. So we'll continue to monitor that out in the Happy Valley area. A couple of other areas we've implemented route changes to try to see if that would get ridership up on the lines. All in all, I believe we've revised over 24 of the lines in the proposal from the initial proposal. And at this point, We've taken a look at detailed ridership, trip by trip, line by line, to come up with this recommendation to you, and incorporated the comments from the public that we've received. So with that, I believe we have the best proposal possible for the level of reduction that we need to achieve for this coming fiscal, or beginning of the fiscal year.
Okay, Mr. Playfair.
Ordinance number 306, an ordinance of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, TriMet, adopting service changes and amending TriMet Code Chapter 22.
Okay, now proceed with the public hearing, and I'll call you, those of you that have asked to have a chance to speak to us as you entered, and sometimes it's hard for me to read your writing, so in those cases I'll try to identify you by something I can read, like the address or something of that sort. First, Mr. Fishman. Thank you, Ken. Oh, and let me mention this at the outset. Please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes.